We are raised with a very specific definition of strength. From the time we are children, we are told to stand our ground. We are told to be like a rock, like a wall, like a fortress. We admire the people who never flinch. We look up to those who never change their minds. We believe that to be strong means to be unyielding. We think that resilience is about how much force we can withstand without moving an inch. But there is a dark side to this kind of strength. If you look around you, you might notice a strange pattern. It is often the strongest people who fall the hardest. It is the person who holds everything together who eventually suffers the most catastrophic breakdown. It is the rigid system that shatters completely when the unexpected happens. We carry the weight of the world on our shoulders because we are afraid that if we shift even a little, we are weak. And this fear of movement, this fear of bending, is exactly what makes us brittle. To understand the true nature of survival, we must leave the city and walk to the edge of a wild river. We must go back to a time when the world was ruled by the wind and the trees. On the bank of this river stood a magnificent oak tree. It was a giant. Its trunk was as wide as a house. Its bark was thick and scarred like the armor of an old general. Its roots went deep into the dark earth, gripping the soil with fingers of iron. The oak was proud. It had stood for 100 years. It had seen armies march past. It had seen floods rise and fall. It felt invincible. Growing in the mud at the foot of the oak was a patch of reeds. They were thin, green, and fragile. They looked like nothing. They had no thick bark. They had no deep roots. Every time the breeze blew, the reeds would tremble and bow. The oak looked down at the reeds with pity and perhaps a little contempt. "You poor creatures," the oak rumbled, its leaves rustling with arrogance. "Nature has been cruel to you. A mere breath of air makes you bow your heads in submission. Look at me. I stop the wind. I block the sun. I am the king of this riverbank. Nothing moves me." The reeds whispered back, their voices soft and rustling. "We do not mind the wind. We do not fight it. We survive because we do not fear bowing." One evening, the sky turned a bruised purple. The air grew heavy and hot. The birds stopped singing. A silence fell over the river, the kind of silence that screams of danger. A great storm was coming. It was a hurricane, a fury of wind and rain that happens only once in a generation. The wind hit the riverbank like a physical blow. It howled through the valley. The great oak puffed out its chest. It stiffened its branches. It locked its roots. It prepared to fight the wind as it had always done. It met force with force. For a while, it seemed to work. The oak stood firm, groaning under the pressure. But the wind did not stop. It pushed harder. The pressure on the rigid wood began to build. Because the oak refused to move, it absorbed every ounce of the wind's violence. The tension in the trunk grew unbearable. The wood fibers screamed. Down in the mud, the reeds did something different. As the gale-force winds hit them, they did not stand up. They went flat. They bowed all the way down, their tips touching the water. They offered no resistance. The wind roared over them, finding nothing to grab onto. They let the storm pass through them. Suddenly, a sound like a gunshot echoed through the valley. It was not thunder. It was the great oak. The force of the wind had exceeded the strength of the wood. With a terrible crash, The mighty trunk snapped in half. The roots were torn from the earth. The giant fell. Morning came. The storm had passed. The sun rose over a scene of devastation. The great oak lay shattered, a ruin of broken timber. But slowly, quietly, the reeds began to lift their heads. They were unharmed. They stood upright in the morning light, swaying gently in the breeze, survivors of a night that had destroyed a giant. This fable, told by Aesop and echoed in the Tao Te Ching, is a warning. It asks us to examine our own strategy for living. Are you the oak, or are you the reed? In our modern lives, we are often rewarded for being the oak. In the workplace, we are praised for being stubborn, for sticking to the plan, for powering through obstacles. We think that professionalism means having a rigid exterior. We refuse to show emotion. We refuse to admit we are overwhelmed. We think that if we just stiffen our backs, the stress cannot hurt us. But look at what happens to the oak personality. Think of the employee who refuses to adapt to new technology because this is how I have always done it. They stand firm in their old ways. They fight the wind of change, and eventually, they break. They lose their job, or they become obsolete. Think of the partner in a relationship who must win every argument. They treat every disagreement as a battle of wills. They stand their ground. They never apologize first. They feel strong because they never back down. But the relationship cannot survive that rigidity. The tension builds and builds until the connection snaps. They win the battle, but they lose the war. Think of your own mental health. How often do you tell yourself, "I am fine," when you are not fine? You hold it in. You repress the grief, the anger, the exhaustion. You stiffen your psychological defenses. You are trying to block the wind. But the body keeps the score. The stress accumulates in your nervous system. And one day, over something small, a spilled cup of coffee, a rude comment, you snap. The breakdown happens not because you were weak, but because you were too rigid for too long. The reed mentality offers a different way. It is not about cowardice. It is not about having no principles. It is about understanding the physics of survival. To be the reed means to understand that you cannot control the storm. You cannot stop the economy from changing. You cannot stop people from criticizing you. You cannot stop the waves of grief or anxiety from coming. If you fight these things, if you try to block them with your ego, you will exhaust yourself. You will break. Instead, you must learn to bow. When a crisis hits, do not stiffen up. Do not immediately go into defense mode. Acknowledge the force. Feel the wind. Say to yourself, "This is happening." Let the energy pass through you. If someone criticizes you, the oak tries to argue back immediately. The oak tries to prove them wrong. The reed listens. The reed asks, "Is there truth in this?" The reed lets the sting of the words pass over and then decides how to respond from a place of calm. This flexibility requires a deep internal stability. The reed can bow because it knows it will rise again. Its roots are not deep and rigid, they are wide and fibrous. They move with the soil. There is a concept in martial arts called yielding. If an opponent pushes you hard and you push back, it becomes a contest of strength. But if they push you and you pull them in the direction they are pushing, they lose their balance. You use their energy against them. This is the wisdom of the reed. How can you practice this today? Start with your body. When you feel stress, notice what happens physically. Your shoulders go up, your jaw clenches, your stomach tightens. You are becoming the oak. You are preparing for impact. Consciously do the opposite. Drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw, soften your belly. Signal to your nervous system that you are fluid. Tell yourself, I can handle this flow. Look at your plans. We often make rigid plans for our lives. I must be married by 30. I must have this job by 40. When life goes off script, the rigid planner falls into despair. The flexible planner looks at the new landscape and finds a new path. They flow like water around the obstacle. There is a humility in flexibility. It takes confidence to admit that you need to change. It takes strength to say, I was wrong, or I need help, or I need to rest. The oak thinks it is the center of the universe. It thinks it can command the weather. The reed knows it is just a part of the ecosystem. It moves with the rhythm of nature, not against it. As you move through your week, remember the storm. Remember that the storms of life are inevitable. You cannot legislate the wind. You cannot outlaw the rain. The only thing you can control is your reaction. Do not try to be the unmoving wall. That is a game you will eventually lose. Be the grass, be the water, be the reed. When the pressure comes, do not be afraid to bow. It is not a sign of defeat. It is the secret mechanism of your survival. The storm will pass. And when the sky clears, while the giants lie broken on the ground, you will still be standing.